The moment Classus hit the ground, his 50-pound rucksack threw him off balance and fell directly into a small creek. "Really?" Gabriel vocalized. A few snorts were heard as everyone held their defensive posture. "Give him a break, Gabe. He's obviously never fast-roped, let alone done anything involved with air assault," Charisse chided. Charisse walked over and helped him out of the water. The poor mammal gasped for air as he was pulled out and coughed. Not only was he subordinate to lower enlisted men, he just humiliated himself in front of a Xeno army. He surely has hit rock bottom and it can't get any worse than this. Looking into the creek, Classus saw that his reflection still held that damnable dye in his fur. Yes, it can. It can definitely always get worse. With a sigh, Classus took Charisse's hand and was pulled to his feet. "Thanks. Cher, right?" Classus inquired. Charisse looked back at him and said in a much colder tone, "It's Charisse." Charisse spun around and went back to her position to cover her sector. He supposed he understood. They seemed like a very tight unit. Barbecue said over the net, "Darkstar, this is Malice. Be advised, we're on the ground and making our... Darkstar, this is Malice. Be advised. We're on the ground and making our way to our AO. Over." A reply came over the net. "Copy that, Malice. Don't get our linguist killed. Out." Barbecue sighed and walked next to Classus and slapped his rucksack, causing him to flinch. "You're with me. You stay 5 meters away from me at all times. You go where I go and do what I do. When I tell you to move, you move." The man left no room for argument as he spun and addressed the team. "All right, Gabe, you're on point. Animal Mother, pay close attention to Gabe. We're not trying to get noticed. So you only shoot when Gabe shoots." A grunt of affirmation as Animal Mother adjusts his belt-fed SWAT automatic weapon. Barbecue continued, "We peel in pairs if shit gets bad. This excludes the linguist. You'll be near one of us at all times, even if it puts us into a group. All right, sync up your gear and let's get this shit over with." Everybody stood up and slowly proceeded through the jungle in their patrolling formation. Rivers, rapids, swamps, vicious amphibians, giant insects as big as your head. Classus has truly died and gone to hell. They've been walking, climbing, wading through chest-high water, swimming and sliding through this hellscape for hours. Unable to handle it anymore, he spoke loudly. "How far do you think—" Barbecue immediately silenced him by covering his mouth. "When did you get behind me?" the terrified mammal squeaked in his own mind. In a shushed voice, Shut the fuck. We're deep in Charlie Jungle. If you have something to say it over the chat or use hand signals." It dawned on him that they hadn't said a word this entire time. They've had a 15-meter spread and only communicated with hand signals, or through the text on their local data net. "Charlie?" Classus pinged over their chat. A feed of text communication popped up, containing the other members having a conversation about something called Vietnam. A message from Charisse answered his question. "Charlie is our code word for the Kong, and we're patrol to contact, so we're going until we find someone." Another message popped up from Animal Mother. "Can you also stop being so fucking loud? I can hear you crunch every branch and pant all the way up here." Now that he thought about it, they were eerily quiet, like ghosts moving through the vegetation. Gabe's hand quickly went up to the side of him in a fist. Everyone immediately froze and dropped their rucksacks at the same time. Classus was startled by the seemingly quick and fluid movements. Everyone had their weapons raised and watched their sectors, then heard several clicks as they turned their weapons from safe to fire. Barbecue grabbed Classus and pulled him down to one knee behind some foliage. "Be as quiet and still as you possibly can. Their eyes seem to glide over us if we don't move." Straining his eyes, Classus couldn't see or hear whatever spooked them. The hand sign for get down was given by Gabe, and Barbecue pushed him onto his belly. "Stop trying to look for things in the forest. Try to look ahead as if you're trying to see through it, and focus on things' movement." Following the team sergeant's advice reluctantly, he gave it a try. There. It was hardly noticeable in the incredibly dense jungle, but several shapes were lumbering towards their position. His blood ran cold. Everyone had their weapons trained on different areas. He was worried they didn't see what was ahead, and that's why they didn't have their weapons trained on the figure moving directly ahead of them. He held his tongue and was as still as he possibly could. Now is not the time to be asking questions. Classus just had to trust and hope they knew what they were doing. And then he heard them. More rustling and crunching of branches directly to their left. Choosing to trust the humans has just prevented them from being discovered. It seemed that the pair of reptiles didn't notice them as they leisurely walked towards the human squad in their bright red combat armor. He also noticed the pole attached to their back held a banner that denoted their unit and rank. Classus was breathing heavily, his heart pounding when he heard their guttural tones of language. "Why are we patrolling here? There's nothing here. Let's go back to the supply den." A voice from his flank resounded. The lizard next to him spoke. "Overlord is scared. There has been a constant harassment from around this area, as if they're trying to sniff us out." Classus heard. "Overlord is scared of his own shadow. We've dug this den to directly supply our front lines. We should be there instead." This group was close. Classus didn't even realize it, Had the humans noticed all of them? They closed in, continuing to talk. We moved a large portion of our supplies here. It must be defended even if it's not glorious. They were about 20 to 30 meters from their position. Classus panicked and did something foolish. He flipped his weapon from safe to fully auto. The lizards turned around to join the rest of their squad further when an audible click-click resounded in the area that they were just looking at. Both lizards turned around and immediately started scanning the area. That was not an animal, said a lizard closest to the hidden squad. It started to approach the group to investigate, honing in on where the sound might have come from. The lumbering beast approached, unable to see anything, and when he reached the 10-meter mark, instinctively readied his weapon. The reptile dropped. Sherry stumped 4 rounds into the chest of the lizard, and within just half of a second, she was on her knees, snapping her muzzle to the other sentry. The back of the head and neck of the unprepared lizard burst open. Surprising Classus at the sheer speed. The reaction time was unreal. Then the cacophony of noise. Animal Mother held down the trigger on his unsuppressed weapon, sweeping the jungle in front of them in the direction he and Gabe had their weapons pointed towards. Both of them ripped apart a squad of 12 lizards that were huddled together in a tight formation. The battle kicked off. Barbecue stood up, grabbed Classus, and dragged him to the tree in a near-dead sprint as everyone scattered, engaging lizards in different directions. "Contact right!" was yelled by someone as Animal Mother shifted his fire, lifting his weapon up to avoid pointing it at Gabe in transition, and started laying in hate in that direction. Classus noticed Animal Mother's weapon was creating pressure waves from the barrel, kicking up dirt, ripping at foliage around it as it fired 10-round bursts. The infernal machine spat hatred and death at 750 rounds a minute. Its projectiles were blowing straight through trees, hitting lizards hiding behind them, snapping branches and destroying rocks that weren't thick enough. After their initial volley that ensured immediate threats were dead or dying, the orders came out. "Sergei, get smoke out. Jin, prep a fire mission. Gabe, Cher, push left and waste those fucks." As everyone was laying down a hail of suppressing fire to give the illusion of a much larger force, Gabe and Cher stood up and ran left. As they were moving to their new positions, they made sure the reptiles Cher initially engaged were dead, by putting another bullet in each of their heads. They were making their way to a flanking position when a heavy counter-volley happened. This was a goddamn crude weapon pointed in their position. Everyone knew that thing needed to be gone yesterday. Ducking behind cover as they were moving, slags of plasma raced past them, slagging anything they hit. The massive bullets seemed to splash on everything when they hit, turning wood to ash and dirt to glass. Gabe took a knee behind a tree and started to catch a few lizards in the open as they were getting ready to retaliate after being pinned down. He snapped his weapon up and tore into them as they crumpled to the ground, screeching. Cher was still in a dead sprint, pushing towards her new position. Small bolts of plasma from the lizard handheld weapons streamed by her, but soon let up as the focus shifted to her teammates slaying their war brothers. She slid into a depression and yelled, "You're up!" Cher lifted her rifle to provide covering fire for Gabe as he stood up to run towards her position. She caught a further 6 lizards out that were trying to respond to their flank and proceeded to rip them apart. Cher proceeded to light them up. They clutched their bodies and screeched as they fell, not wanting to leave it to chance as Gabe was running towards her position. She didn't stop firing even as they lay, only twitching as rounds hit their bodies. The core of the team continued providing covering fire for the 2 flankers as they kept around 30 lizards pinned down. Any foolish enough to stand in the open to get a clear shot was effectively sawed in half by Animal Mother. Classus was thankful he took the headset and wore them, because he was certain he would be deaf by now. The humans' weapons were loud. The ones with the cans on them were much more manageable, but Animal Mother's weapon was a terror weapon in sound alone. Lizards kept their heads down and fired over their positions. Ones foolish enough to think trees protected them briefly learned the lesson between cover and concealment, as the trunks burst open and bullets burst into their bodies. Classus was captivated. They flowed from rocks, to trees, to mounds of dirt while firing their weapons with near-pinpoint accuracy. Their oddly patterned armor even made it hard for him to understand where they actually were, and he was standing next to them. Their armor clearly broke up their silhouette. Barbecue slapped the back of Classus's head, breaking him out of his reverie, and yelled, "Fire your fucking weapon!" Fumbling, Classus lifted the rifle and started to pull the trigger. Every squeeze made the rifle violently push the butt of the rifle into his shoulder. Even though the unexpected recoil surprised him, he held the trigger down, dumping all 40 rounds in the general area of where they were receiving fire from. He was cowering behind his tree, fumbling, trying to reload this infernal thing when he heard Jin's distinctive voice yell into his headset. Mailman, this is Malice, fire mission, danger close." Classus couldn't understand what was being said, as Jin started shouting numbers at his radio, and decided to focus on more immediate problems. Unfamiliar with how to fully utilize his weapon, he ended up spraying uncontrollably in the general area of incoming fire. His rounds were ripping through trees and canopy, when he unwittingly hit one of the gunners in the fortification in the head, and momentarily stopped its fire. Finishing another magazine of ammunition, he ducked back into cover to reload when he paid attention to Jin's voice again. "1 plasma bunker in the open, 20 dismounts, 2 HE, LGHE, fire for effect." The words in bright red started flashing in Classus' HUD. 2 laser-guided high-explosive inbound. Not understanding the context of what this meant, he ignored and continued fighting. The battle had been raging for 10 minutes, and they knew that gun emplacement needed to be gone, now. It was 600 meters away and blindly firing in their direction. But it was a big gun, and not one you needed to aim well with to be effective. With the sheer volume of fire being thrown out by the other emplacement, Cher and Gabe stopped firing and waited. 12 lizards ran up on the other side of their little depression, 10 meters away from them. Gabe peeked and immediately went, "Oh, fuck, that's a lot, and they're setting up another heavy plasma caster." Gabe peeked and immediately went down. Gabe was lying down, pressed against the wall of the depression, and Cher climbed on top of him and peeked over. That's when Cher pulled out a grenade and pulled the pin. "Okay, that's cool. Gonna throw a grenade? It's party time, I guess." Gabe silently and nervously blurted out, as Cher was literally pinning him to the ground between her legs. He heard her mumble, "Fuck it, we're all gonna die. I don't give a fuck." He did a retake and saw that smirk she made whenever she's going to do something fucked up or crazy. The spoon of the grenade went flying past his face. She was still holding the grenade. Shock and unbridled fear spread across Gabe's face. 1,000. Oh my god, throw it. 2,000. Oh my god, throw it. 3,000. Oh my god, please throw it. 4,000. She gingerly tossed the grenade over the depression. 5,000. As 3 of the 12-man squad waddled over with the heavy plasma caster, the rest were providing security and firing in the general direction of where the Imperials might be. They were hard to see and moved like ghosts. The gun was finally set up on a log in a flanking position, against the petulant snacks that dared to come so deep into their territory. They'd make sure the Maw would take them. But as everything was perfectly set up, the War Master just barely noticed and looked up to see a strange ball flying overhead. Thoom! Years of training and experience took over as they both popped over the depression at the same time. The grenade killed 3 instantly, and the rest were either severely wounded or incapacitated as they aimed their weapons. The pair of humans emptied their magazine into the lizards, who were all sprawled on the ground or were on their knees, disoriented. Puffs of dirt, gore, and blood splatter all over the ground and dead tree. The enemy squad no longer moved as their blood seeped into the ground. The pair immediately reloaded and cautiously advanced to make sure all the lizards were dead. Once satisfied, Gabe looked at Cher in irritation, looking to give her a piece of his mind. She innocently smiled and winked, when then the radio crackled to life in their headset. Jin yelled over the net, "Gabe, we've got mail. 2 beam riders inbound." Gabe immediately ran in a dead sprint to a 4-meter-tall mound of rock and earth. The second he heard Jin and started to climb. Gabe stood straight up to get a clearer view and immediately spotted what he was looking for. The extremely obvious muzzle flashes of plasma blasted away on the other side of the jungle. Bright red globs rocketed towards the core of the team's general area. Gabe got into a standing marksman's stance and pointed his weapon directly at the fortification. Flipping on his IR laser, slave to the human's data net, he waited for confirmation in frustration. The firing stopped momentarily as Animal Mother shifted his fire towards the bright muzzle flash. It was hard getting a lock with this dense jungle, and he knew the ordnance coming was massive. "Come on, you fat fuck, lock on, come on, come on!" He was a sitting duck. All it took was one asshole with a brain to drop him. Ding! A noise rang inside his headset, and an icon on his HUD went green. "Locked! Cover!" Gabe yelled over the net as he jumped off the boulder and tackled Cher into the depression. Barbecue was having a stroke. This fucking guy went through 4 mags in just as many seconds. He wasn't even aiming his rifle. He repressed the urge to shoot him in the back of the head and claim enemy action as large bolts of plasma slammed into trees, splintering them into burning shards and slagging the ground around him. Then he heard Gabe's voice over the net. "Locked! Cover!" Barbecue grabbed Classus, pulled him away from the tree, and threw him into a ditch. He immediately dove in as well and covered the furred mammal with his body. Surprised by Barbecue's sudden and violent action, he yelped and dropped his weapon in surprise as he fell into the hole, and then proceeded to be smothered by this angry dark man. The position he was just at was ripped apart by heavy plasma fire. That's when, in only what he can describe as a pair of bone-shattering explosions, ripped through the jungle in quick succession. 2 2,000-pound laser-guided high-explosive shells just slammed into the fortification, and the fireball consumed the newly arrived reinforcements around it. The blast wave uprooted trees and sent debris over 100 meters into the air. The noise would have probably left Classus deaf if it wasn't for the noise-adjusting headset. Pure silence reigned over the jungle as a voice crackled over the radio. "Malice, this is Mailman. Status?" Hey everybody, thanks for watching. Everything I use is in the description below. If you have a story you'd like to hear narrated, please let me know and I'll contact the author and we'll see if we can make that happen. Thanks again for watching. It's a scary world out there, but remember to look up and seek the stars.